inch closer to Monday night, that very predictable national championship game between Indiana and Miami. Who had that one when it all began? In fact, frankly, nobody had Indiana since they were the preseason number 20 pick. Always great to catch up with Josh Pate. And Josh, nobody better than to mind your mind on this one, because we just had a guest on apologizing for not picking Indiana. Do you know anybody that picked Indiana when it all started?
So Cole Kublik, mutual friend of ours, was on the phone with him about 10 minutes ago, going over some stuff for the game. And I said, do you think Indiana's a surprise? Because I think if you're just a common sports fan, but you don't watch a lot of college football, and you stroll past this season, you would ask, why are people surprised? Didn't that team make the playoff last year? Doesn't it seem like a natural progression that that team would then ascend to the national championship? And I guess that makes sense, but I don't really think that's the whole picture, Paul. Like, it's a very, very big shock to me when a team operates at the efficiency levels, I guess, that Indiana has. I don't care what the average age of your team is, because I could let everybody keep their players the next 5 years, and I don't know that any of them are operating at a more efficient level than Indiana. And also, we have been in a world up until about apparently 5 minutes ago where recruiting rankings, mock drafts, talent level, all this stuff was like oxygen. All of this stuff ruled the day. And I'm not saying that team dynamics didn't matter, they always have. But man, we've been used to seeing the tops of the tallest trees be what rules the day at the end. And now you shave them down a little bit, transfer portal, NIL, it evens things out a little bit. And Kurt Signetti comes along at the right time and just boom. So, no, I don't know of anyone that had him there. I don't know of Indiana fans that had him there.
Josh, you know how reactionary college football is. Everybody tried to be Nick Saban. Everybody tried to replicate Kirby Smart. It's not easy replicating what Signetti has done, but what do you think the trickle down will be of programs trying to be that next big factor?
This is the big benefit, I think, of them being good, them making this run. Because you're right, everyone's always chasing a model. I know in the NFL for a long time, people chased, the Patriot model, the Belichick way. People chased the Saban way in college football. Now, anytime someone said they were chasing the Saban way, many of us chuckled behind the scenes, because when you really understood the machine, Alabama was, I don't think Nick Saban was ever hesitant in sharing every bit of his secret sauce, secret formula, because he knew no one was going to replicate it anyway. And how many of his assistants did we see hired? All over the place. They littered this league and other leagues. And hardly any of them, aside from Kirby, did much of anything. Dan Landing's done some things recently. Kurt Signetti now, very, very recently. But I think it's a really, really good deal if the Indiana model is what people want to chase. Now, what you're not going to do is you're not going to have an average age of 23 years old on your roster. Like, the time for that is probably coming to an end, and you're probably looking at a one-off in that case. However, a lot of the things Signetti talks about when it comes to the dynamics and the fundamental like pillars of the way he built his program, it all boils down to retention, Paul. It all boils down to recruiting the right guys, which means knowing how to evaluate, planting them in your garden, and then growing them. So cultivating, developing, things we used to talk about all the time. If that in the aggregate is what people begin chasing again as a result of watching Indiana do what they've done, good. Because I'm looking at my phone earlier. Pete Nakos texted me. I asked him how many guys are in the portal, and he said over 3,600 FBS guys, over 10,000 total. That's the stupidest headline for us to ever be talking about. And so the sooner that we can get past that era, the better to me.
Josh, you understand the narrative of the SEC. You live in this part of the world, and you know what people are saying right now, and there's a great deal of glee as they say it. How should the SEC be reacting, or can they react, or what is this moment in time really like for the SEC, who has been at the top for so very long?
I think it's a transition moment. Some people say inflection point. I think that's an overused term. I just think it's a little bit of them being caught in transition. So the world changed, the college football world changed, but normally when you talk about that stuff, it's 5 year increments, 10 year increments. Things slowly change. The ice cube slowly melts. That's not the way it changed in college football. And the SEC, I think, kind of got caught with its head spinning a little bit. So that's a bunch of word salad. Here's where I think the rubber meets the road. I don't think the SEC was equipped to not have a decided talent advantage over the rest of the country. And I think they got lazy and got a little loose in a lot of their practices because they knew they could. Because they knew for a long time we're going to roll out of bed in the morning and we're going to have better Jimmies and Joes than the rest of college football. And so we don't need to be airtight on everything. What we do need to do is keep the talent home and do whatever it takes to keep the talent home in Texas or Mississippi or Alabama, Georgia, et cetera. And then what we need to do is we need to load up staffs with the best recruiters in the country to continue that cycle. And in many cases, as you know, Paul, it comes down to an A-B scenario. When you're hiring, when you're staffing, you can either prioritize recruiting, talent acquisition, or you could prioritize X's and O's. And sometimes one has to come at the expense of the other. And the SEC chose one way disproportionately for a long time because they knew, I mean, if we got the players, that's what wins games. And that was not a foolish way of thinking. But then, again, when the dynamics changed and when it was incentivized for players to go elsewhere, we're still very, very much sort of in the glow of those changes. And in the aftermath of it, Paul, I look at the Big Ten, and the big edge that I see up there is they had to come up a little different side of the mountain than the SEC for a long time. They couldn't afford to be loose in those kind of practices. Or to put it more plainly, when you make a hire in the SEC in 2015, 16, 17, you're likely to be so thankful to the representation that got you that job that you just hit that representation back up and say, all right, time to fill my building with assistant coaches. Who do you guys have? Just send them to me. That's a very disappointing truth, but that is a truth of how a lot of SEC teams staff for a long time. It's not so much the practice at Iowa or Wisconsin or Illinois or Michigan State. That's not the way they lived. And so when we come into this new era, I think you got better staffs up there, top to bottom. I got supreme respect for the staffs in the SEC. There's some really good minds in the SEC, but there is far less fat on the bone up in the Big Ten than there is in the SEC. It's just a needed adjustment. It'll happen in time. It won't take that long, but it's still a learning curve, I think, for a lot of folks to just not wake up with that huge talent edge every morning.
Josh, finally, it's impossible to predict, as we know from this past season, but as you look at this new influx of SEC coaches, they're everywhere, everybody repopulates. Do you think the league has helped itself with all the firings and the hirings, or for what you just got through saying, do you think some of that or a lot of that still exists?
I think it helped itself. Again, it's a total like aggregate helped itself. I think that, the direction Auburn went. Now, look, they came very close to fumbling that search fantastically, but I don't really care because they ended up with, I think, a really quality candidate. And that's not just an Auburn or an SEC thing, because I think I could say the same thing, copy and paste about Penn State. They ended up with a very quality candidate. But at Auburn, at Florida, you're looking at guys who I've been pretty high on in both cases for a while. I'm happy they get their shot. They're walking into ready-made situations where I think both programs are primed. Both programs are starved for a winner. But I don't even look at the new coaches, Paul. I look at a place like Tennessee. Look at the changes on Josh Heupel's staff and look at how hard they're hitting the portal again. Like, I think about teams like that, and I think that the separator, like the difference in you being able to plead your case come playoff time, is not so much to do with the top of your conference. It's the level B, whatever that B tier ends up being. And any given year, that could be Tennessee, that could be South Carolina, that could be Ole Miss, Auburn. You got to fatten that thing up a little bit again because it leaned out a little bit over the past year, maybe 2 years. But look, I'm even encouraged about what Will Stein's doing at Kentucky. I conditionally am encouraged by what we just saw Pete Golding do. Now, I think there was a little bit of a sugar high adrenaline effect there. And I don't really, it still remains to be seen to me what the long-term product's going to be there. But at the very least, Silverfield up at Arkansas, you've got a lot of youth from the head coaching perspective infused into the conference. I always get excited by that.
Great stuff, always. Josh Pate, appreciate very much you joining us as we continue here on a Thursday afternoon. We'll come back. More of your phone calls right after this.
You want this, you got that. No way, watch them walk right past you. Run fast while you have the chance. Don't speak, let them look right at you.